Okay, so let me introduce the next panel. We've got a great session coming up, hosted by MetricStream's Chief Human Resources Officer. So sticking with our summit theme, the panel is entitled Perform with Integrity, Staying Focused During COVID-19 and Beyond. Seema, over to you.
Thank you, Peter. While risk and compliance is almost considered table stakes, the focus on ethics and trust has been growing in the last few years. Especially in these unprecedented times, ethics, integrity, and trust has suddenly been thrust in the limelight as corporations are confronted with some real-time decision-making. How do you ensure that integrity and ethics drive the brand value creation of corporations? I am absolutely honored to be joined by some very eminent leaders to address some of these questions. Klaus Moosmayer, member of the Executive Committee and Chief Ethics, Risk and Compliance of Novartis. Rob Chesnut, Chief Ethics Officer of Airbnb and author of an upcoming book, Intentional Integrity. Rani Selvarajoo Urbas of Google Cloud Trust and on the go-to-market board for Capital G as well. Welcome, panelists. So we will also be taking some audience questions, so please keep adding them to the chat so that my colleagues can curate them for the panel session. So Novartis, Airbnb, and Google, of course, all three of you have been impacted in many different ways in the last few months. How do you maintain that balance in these tough financial times between financial considerations, brand impact, and human empathy? Perhaps, Klaus, we could start with you and then hear from Rob and Rani, all three of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Seema, and dear colleagues. A pleasure to be at this panel in these difficult but also challenging times. I would say for our company, the purpose for our associates was never more important than in these days. Why? You just have to imagine we need to serve, we are proud to serve around 800 million patients around the globe with essential medicines, innovative medicines. So in this pandemic situation, having the lockdown in place, how to reach the patients who can't go to their doctor, who can't go to their hospital, to secure supply chain, of course, is a very, very important but noble task. On the other hand, as a pharmaceutical company, we are also heavily engaged in the fight against COVID-19 by funds and donations, by own research and development, and by an unprecedented industry-wide collaboration. So for ethic, risk and compliance, we are in the middle of this exercise. Why? Because the crisis management and the business continuity management is part of our function. So we are coordinating from a crisis point of view, from a risk management point of view, all the work streams at Novartis to serve our 800 million patients around the globe with all our associates around the globe in all the different countries. And of course, how do you engage the people? I give you one example. We have crowdsourced over the last couple of months ideas for our new code of ethics, which will totally be based on behavioral science. So to launch the code of ethics in the middle of a pandemic situation has created a big, big applause by our associates, a big engagement to have ethical standards in the middle of a crisis management. We all have the challenges. We have to focus on the risks, but we also see the great opportunities to reestablish the purpose of the pharmaceutical industry. Back to you and the colleagues, Seema. Thank you.
I agree with you. There is, I think, never a more important time for ethics than in a time like this. Crisis reveals the character of a company, and how you treat people in times like this will make an impression for a long period of time. I think for Airbnb, we're able to lean on the way that we operate as a company during times of non-crisis. And that is, we take a stakeholder approach to the way that we manage the company. Financial considerations, our investors are extremely important to us. But they are not, they are.
Yes, no, thank you. Rob, I think we were having a little bit of an audio issue. I think we were hearing your audio, but not the video as much. But since you seem to be live again, if you don't mind repeating the last 30 seconds, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Airbnb operates with a stakeholder approach in times of non-crisis. So we explicitly recognize that while our financial considerations are extremely important, we also have an obligation to consider the interest of our employees, our guests, our hosts, and our communities in all decisions that we make. So in a time of a crisis, that just doesn't change. And therefore, since we are used to making decisions by balancing these different stakeholders, when times are good, it's a good muscle for us to have, and it's something we lean on in times of crisis.
Right. Thank you so much, Rob. Rani, over to you. Would love to hear what's happening at Google Cloud Trust as well.
Absolutely. I mean, these are, as both Rob and Klaus have said, these are really challenging times, and there are still dark days ahead of us. And I think we're all painfully aware of society's challenges and the effect it's having on our friends, on our neighbors, and definitely our customers. But to quote Winston Churchill, if you're going through hell, keep going. There will be better days ahead. And to answer the question, Seema, I was going to kind of focus in on our collective line of work in risk and compliance. And we're all aware of the need to balance launching new products and solutions with the requirements of risk and compliance, and particularly now. And we're concerned, across the industry, and definitely I see that with our customers, with ourselves, with changing regulations. And regulations are created often, though not always, in response to a problem, either real or perceived. And in some ways, a regulation is a trailing indicator of public sentiment. But I really believe that now is the time to focus on the leading indicators, listening to your customers. Now more than ever, when resources are tight, and building solutions that address those concerns. I think everyone here can understand what laws are proposed, what regulations are debated, and what our customers are demanding well before those rules are codified. And I think we have a unique opportunity to be the voice of our customer in our respective companies long before those concerns become rules and regulations. So my advice, perhaps lean into product design, participate more in process innovation. Now is the time that collectively we should all have a seat at the table, because that's how we can best balance brand impact with human empathy and helping our respective companies weather this pandemic from a financial and business perspective.
Right. Thank you so much, Rani. Any comments from the other two people to, the comments that each of you have made before I move on to the next question? And by the way, I'm starting to get a lot of audience questions as well, but very, very profound thoughts here.
Yeah, I would say it's striking how strong we all agree that it's about both. It's about risk and opportunity. It's about crisis management and ethical integrity considerations. And right, Rani, there will be dark days, but the opportunity is also we increasingly have to see, especially in ethics, risk, and compliance.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Yeah.
Right. So Rob, let me just start with you, because Airbnb has been so much in the limelight recently, and the company has always had so much of a focus on building strong culture and control. So now, with the employees working from home, how are you seeing all this play out?
It's a challenge. Airbnb's mission, even though we're a tech company, we're about connecting people in a very human way through travel. So this is a strange time for us, where travel around the globe has virtually stopped. And instead of being able to work together in a very human way in the office, now we're forced to work remotely. I think this is a great time to lean on what you've already established, so that I think, credit to Klaus that you can actually go through the process of a new code of conduct remotely. We have been using what we have built over the years and leaning on that now as a real source of strength. Again, because ethics is something that you don't abandon in a crisis, you actually lean on it. We pulled that out, and we communicate quite a bit about it through the means that we do have. For example, our CEO does a Q&A with all employees every single Thursday. And that's been particularly important as we've, for example, had to go through a layoff and let off nearly a quarter of our workforce. But I think doing it in a way that displayed a lot of empathy and caring for those that we let go sent a strong message to the employees that remain that our culture still remains strong. Similarly, we've had to work with our guest and host community quite a bit. There was a tremendous impact with guests needing to cancel reservations that were not cancelable under the terms. And we also have had a number of hosts who have faced some real financial strain. We put a $250 million fund aside simply to help our hosts who were impacted by the crisis. So leaning on what we already have as a culture at this time, I think has really helped us get through things so far.
Great. No, thank you. That's really wonderful to hear, Rob. Thank you so much. And so talking about the care and the empathy and moving on to the same thing, Klaus, at Novartis, right, there's been so much of a focus on protecting human rights. And recently, Novartis rolled out the COVID-19 guidelines for the third party as well. So how do you ensure the continuous supply while ensuring integrity, the whole thing in the whole third party network? Would love to hear what's happening in that space there.
Yeah, great question, Seema. Thank you. And I would quote Rob when he started his statement, it's a challenge. So let's face it. A compliance and supply chain is always a challenge. There's a rightfully a huge expectation by society, and rightfully so. On the other hand, each of us in companies, we work with thousands, 10,000s of suppliers and sub-suppliers, which are part of our business chain, but we can't control them day by day. So I believe in the crisis, it pays out for companies who have invested in prevention, in good systems. And this is a learning from COVID-19 maybe. We need to acknowledge more the value of prevention, to invest in prevention. So having what we call at Novartis human rights and third-party risk management, which covers all of our suppliers. So we have human rights due diligence ongoing as we speak, but also say, my dear colleagues, we need to be bold and courageous in a crisis. There are situations when I have to decide within minutes to onboard a new supplier to save health of our associates or to support the life of our patients because we need to continue supply chain. So it's a very important risk management, acknowledging human rights, having invested in good system before the crisis, but also be courageous to make a bold decision if it's needed. And as you said, the COVID-19 guidance applies to all of our suppliers because we believe we have to make clear everybody needs to apply at the same standards of protection for our dear associates in Novartis, in the supply chain, in the sub-suppliers. Hopefully this was a helpful explanation to your very important question, Seema.
Right. Thank you, Klaus. That was very key. So I know both of you are talking about leaning into regulations and plans that you've already had in the past. Rani, similar to those sort of questions. I mean, we've seen a lot of relaxation of regulatory guidelines in certain areas, while we've seen some stricter focus in some of the others. So your role as you work with regional regulators and around privacy, compliance, and the Google Cloud Trust overall, how do you be better prepared for these shifts that are happening right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's not going to be business as usual. It is not, and I think that all of we're, as both Klaus and Rob mentioned, we're really focused on leaning on the plans, the contingency plans, the business continuity plans, and all of these different constructs that we have built within the organization. And I see that also with our other enterprise customers. Leaning into that now more than ever is really important. I mean, for all of you who are attending the summit today, it's clear to me that you've already started preparing for this evolving GRC landscape. It's a bit obvious almost that the first step is to focus our thinking on what's going to be coming next. And I see, particularly right about now, it's a human tendency to over-index on what's happening now versus trying to look a little bit further ahead to see what's coming next. And the current crisis is accelerating economic Darwinism. And it's unfortunate. A lot of, as Rob said, a lot of people losing their jobs, businesses struggling. But companies that survive are accelerating and scaling their digital enablement plans right now. And that's what we're seeing pretty much across our enterprise customers. Every change resourceful companies make to navigate COVID-19 crisis is impacting their IT operating model across multiple facets: product and service delivery, customer insights, process, technology, and definitely governance. So for organizations that will thrive in this climate, the future is suddenly now. And and those plans won't really succeed unless the focus on GRC is integrated upfront right now during this time of rapid change. And it's a consistent message that I'm seeing with many of our customers too, and I'm sure many of you out there can relate to this.
Right. Thank you, Rani. In fact, a lot of the questions that I'm seeing from the audience are very much on the same lines, and I'd love to get everyone's thoughts on with this sudden change in this business operations, what advice do you have for organizations, and how do they use this culture of integrity, trust, awareness to actually enhance the performance of the organization?
Well, I think it starts with an understanding.
Sorry, go ahead.
It starts with an understanding that integrity actually drives the business. There's so much data that we've now seen come out over the last 5 years. Ethics and integrity isn't something that you have to do and simply get through so that you can then get to work. If you have a culture of integrity and ethics in the way that you operate, it will drive your business and make it more effective. Companies with ethics and integrity outperform the market, and they outperform their competitors. One thing I'd urge people to think about: compliance without a culture of integrity and a willingness to speak up is actually dangerous. What we look for is not just whether the boxes are being checked. We look for how much of a willingness do employees have to speak up and ask questions regarding ethics. We've got a program of ethics ambassadors, and these are ordinary employees in marketing and engineering and customer service. They have day jobs, and they are spread out all around the world, but they are also a point of contact for employees who have questions about ethics and integrity. We actually track how many questions these ethics advisors get every quarter. It's great to see those questions go up every quarter, because that indicates that people are comfortable talking about ethics. They're comfortable talking about integrity. And if you've got a culture where people are willing to speak up and willing to ask questions, that to me is a major part of your defense against integrity-related problems.
Yeah, I would fully agree. I mean, the importance of communication is absolutely clear. Let's face it, many people are afraid. So loss of job, imminent loss of job, family health. So what we have seen, the importance of communication is absolutely key and will absolutely also stay on the agenda. You will keep the good people if you communicate in the right way. And as Rob had said, ethics, integrity is a very, very important part of this communication. Second, as Rani said, digital. This also will not go away. And for compliance professionals, there are unique opportunities to de-risk your business model by digital means. And you have to be watch out and careful not to fall back into old habits and to keep the good learnings, what you can all do digitally, especially in the commercial area. And closing, and this was a piece at the FCPA blog I wrote recently, which got quite a traction. It's a unique opportunity, and we're talking here at the Governance, Risk and Compliance Summit, to expand the responsibility of compliance professionals. Compliance professionals are crisis-proven. Compliance professionals know how to do risk-based good communication and cover risks. So it's a time that we go to a really holistic, ethical governance, risk and compliance setup in the companies and give the compliance officers more authority and more leverage in the management. That's an opportunity.
Thank you. In fact, one of the questions we've just received, I'm sorry, Rani, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead, Rani?
Yeah, no worries at all, Seema. And I really, what I was going to say really encompasses what both Rob and Klaus have said. You know, we're all in the business of enabling trust. That's what we do. And right now, we know that more than 30 million Americans have filed for unemployment in the last 2 months. Money is tight, emotions are high, and purchases of all types are being very carefully considered. And businesses and consumers are going to do business with those they trust. It's very simple. It's almost binary. And we're facing a very, very selective marketplace that really with COVID cares a lot about integrity and privacy and trying to do the right thing, more so now than ever. So I think each of us in this field, and it doesn't matter whether we are a risk professional in audit or cybersecurity, we have a unique opportunity to be a trust champion for our businesses. I lead a team at Google just to do this. And ultimately, you know, by doing that, you become the trust champion for your customers. And as Klaus said, it's very easy to fall into a place right now, we're very uncertain times, to see what's the minimum checkbox, as Rob said, we can tick to comply. But really, I think that I urge all of you, as I remind myself, that we can instead focus on what's the best we can do and how we can better that tomorrow for our customers and our businesses. Seema, over to you.
Thank you, Rani. Actually, one of the questions which came up is, if integrity drives the business, do we need to have a certification standard for ethics and integrity? Rani, any thoughts on that?
I think we need an intentional strategy. I think that for too long, integrity has been a poster on the wall, with a pretty sunset and the forest, but people don't really talk about what it means. There might be a compliance strategy, but there's not a particular focus on what does integrity mean and doing the right thing to layer on top of that compliance. And a key point for us is you need both.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, and to add to what Rob said, in a lot of ways, when you think about it, just logically, you're right. If you act with integrity every day, respect your employees, work with your customers, transparency, you're right. What's another checkbox and what's another regulation? But I think we all know that, society is built on and has to be built on written rules, not just unspoken rules, or perhaps rules that we all know and should follow. And I think that there is the level of comfort that we can give either when we acknowledge a third-party audit, let's say, of a particular regulation that we as businesses attest to, I think strengthens our position. It doesn't weaken it. I think that everything that Rob and Klaus are saying about integrity and trust and transparency layers on top of it. It doesn't distract from it. So.
Great. No, thank you. I'm going to take one last question before we actually sign. That question which has just come up is, how does one measure integrity in a work from home model when watching?
Oh, well, let me start here. The crisis is, of course, depressing in many regards. You can't hug your dearest and you feel lonely sometimes. But you have a great opportunity to involve a lot of people, thousands of people in your company into a dialogue. And this goes surprisingly well. And to start a debate, we do in the crisis surveys, crowdsourcing with all of our 108,000 associates around the globe. We do a live meeting, we have virtual coffees, and I'm sure Rani and Rob and everybody is doing the same. And that's a unique opportunity. It's not the really personal contact we wish to have sometimes, but you can reach a lot of people. And the people are increasingly open to give a lot of feedback and to give their thoughts, especially regarding integrity. And therefore, I believe, yes, there's a lot, but there's also a great opportunity.
I
agree with Klaus. I ask people with surveys. I think they'll tell you how they feel about it. But you won't get anywhere if you aren't willing to listen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's true.
Look,
yeah. And to add to that, I was going to say, to add to that, at Google, our most important asset are our employees. So while, of course, we're looking to succeed commercially, focusing on the health and safety of our people remains our true north. And we're confident that if we do that, the integrity that we expect from them, the trust that they give us, just the same way as we our customers, all of those are the best long-term outcome for our business and ultimately our customers.
Great. Rob, Klaus, Rani, you're all truly game changers. So on behalf of MetricStream and the audience, I'd like to thank you for your insights, very thought-provoking comments. And of course, our thoughts go out to those affected by the COVID-19 and those in the front line. Thank you all for watching and signing off. This is Seema Iyer from MetricStream. Thank you.